what happens to the basketball player that shot thousands of hoops before? This time they leave the ground to shoot the hoop, and when they come down, their ACL smashes out. That's not an ACL issue. That's a systems issue. So when we look at the anomalies they built in, so it was accepted that when a person does a bicep curl, that you would see on the concentric, when it's going from concentric to eccentric, there's moments there when nothing's actually happening. It's like a disconnect, and likewise it would change from the eccentric to concentric. So that was just accepted. This is how it is, right? Now, there's an anomaly. That's what we call a singularity. Okay, so now people are trained like that, and they're building these singularities into their system over and over through all different pathways they're doing. So my argument was, because we can't just leave that. You can't just say, this is a systems issue, this ACL incident. So my argument was, because of all these singularities that are in the system, the athlete's foot left the ground. It didn't have the information, the system didn't have the information that it needed because it came across one of these singularities. When they hit the ground, it wasn't anywhere
prepared.
It wasn't anywhere near it should be. So something popped out or whatever. So, if we got that tension, we need to have this state, what we refer to as softly assembled. So if you imagine a spider web poised in between two trees, and people see those structures and go, so what? Well, when you think about it and you look at it, that spider web, what that spider has had to do, all the math to work out what's happening, where the wind is blowing, and these trees are releasing energy at different timescales because they're from different origins, and I've got to have my web in the middle of all that to be able to dissipate all that free energy all the time to stay stable. They're incredible structures. They don't get a map that says, okay, Kenny Spider, when you turn such and such an age, you're going to build this web, and this is what I've got to... No, they've got to cater to the environment, very much so. Now, our systems have got to do that. Now, that web is very softly assembled. So if we build tensions up in our system because we're doing lots of core stability and all this sort of nonsense, if we were sprinting in the park and our foot went into a divot that we didn't know was there, our system needs to respond to that in milliseconds, not microseconds, not milliseconds. By the time your brain learned about that, and responded to, that's a quarter of a second. So our system needs to make these online corrections.
Knowing before your foot even hits the ground.
Well, it hits the ground. You don't know that divot's there.
No.
It just does. And then your system makes an online correction to be able to do that. Now, that level of intelligence, that's imbued within the system itself. Like I said, then the thought comes, oh, gee, that was a divot back there. But you're already 2 or 4 meters down the track. So it's this online correction. So if you think about those kids doing parkour, for example, they're running through those landscapes, bouncing off rocks and all that. The system is very softly assembled, or a good surfer, or somebody's demoing those flow. So that's right. So we need to look at, how do I adopt that state, a softly assembled state when I'm lifting my weights? And in that state, the amount of information that we process is so much more and so much greater. That's why it's harder to go slower when we're doing that, because the processing information per second is so much higher. Our muscles are going to represent that in some way. It's going to have that positive effect.
Because we're a whole system.
And we're seamlessly transitioning from concentric to the eccentric, so there's no privileged point of observation in that, and we're learning to prune this is getting back to emotions. We're learning to prune all our emotional responses and have it in, so it doesn't matter whether I'm the pec fly or the chest press or the leg adductor or lat pull downs or whatever. If somebody was in another room monitoring that, they wouldn't know what I'm doing, because I've just pruned all my responses to it. That's emotional control and regulation.